So you found the perfect piece of land to build your dream property in Dubai. Now comes the design and approvals. In this very special episode of the Dubai Real Estate Podcast, I'm going to be telling you how you get the design done to your specifications and the plans approved as per the government specifications. But before we go ahead, if you're watching this on YouTube, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. Your likes and comments will be highly appreciated. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please do give us a 5-star rating and review. This really helps us getting discovered. And Spotify listeners, please do follow. So let's cue the music.
So as promised to hear, we're here at stage 2.
Yes.
Design and plans approval. Now, let's start this episode like we did with the last episode. Let's do a roll call and figure out who is involved at this stage. I guess because you've titled it Design and Plans Approval, there might be more than one team that you need to work with here.
Yes. So Raj, what happens is this is a very important phase in development. Sometimes this phase of design and planning and approvals can take a lot of time, but if you do it right, I always tell my clients, don't worry about the time it's taking to get the right design, because look, this is about development. We're talking about building something. So the design especially has to be absolutely proper. Mm-hmm. You know, whether you are making this, project for your own use, you're making a rental portfolio asset, or you're building to sell. In all these cases, getting the right design is very, very important. And that's why I always prefer having 2 teams work on it. One which does the design and one which does the approvals. Mm-hmm. So design and planning can be one architect or a designer. And the approvals is the architect or a consultant who specializes in getting approvals from the Dubai municipality or the government authorities involved in the whole process. So this is something which is a very important stage. And ideally, I would always recommend having 2 teams on board. One to take care of the design and the planning. When I say design, it includes the exterior design, interior design, the landscaping, furniture, whatever, everything to do with the design part of it. And then there is a team which takes care of the approvals. So once the designs are formalized, finalized, you've internally approved them that, okay, this is what you want to build on your land. It's good to appoint a specialist who is well versed with the entire, the municipality and the government authorities, and goes ahead and gets you all the approvals you need to actually build on that land.
So if we look at what you just said from the point of view of compliance,
yes,
the designer's job is to ensure that the designs that they create comply with the needs and the use case of the investor.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're a first-time investor who doesn't know about building a property, your consultant, someone like yourself, will also say, well, this is in the best interest of my client, so let's make sure that this is represented in the design.
Correct.
And then there's another type of compliance, which is the person that does your plans approval, and they have to make sure that it's compliant with the government, and the government thinks about it from a health, safety, security, drainage. I'm sure there's many other things. Correct. What are some of the things that obviously, when we talk about investors and we talk about people building a property, their needs are their needs, so we can't speak on behalf of what it is that they're looking for. But maybe more generally speaking, can you give us an insight into what it is that the municipality is signing off or looking at?
Every master community, every development has certain rules and regulations you live by in terms of the open spaces you need to leave, how much you can build on the land, because every land is defined with, a total built-up area. So obviously the municipality will check you're not exceeding the total built-up area.
That's a big variable, eh? This term of total built-up area, something you can expect to hear in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we also call it the GFA, gross floor area, or a total built-up area.
Yeah.
What happens is different people use different terms, but to make it more simpler, we use total built-up area. So the municipality is going to check what you're building. Then also they need to check, are you building as per the specifications set out by the government, because there are certain norms that you need to use, certain grade of materials, so the municipality will check that. Obviously, once it's built, the safety regulations, the firefighting, the civil defense comes into place to see things are done, the entry, exit, access, then connection to the drainage, electricity. So obviously there are a lot of technicalities which the municipality goes through, and that's why if you have a proper experienced licensing architect or a consultant who does approvals on a regular basis, he or she or that firm will know exactly what is to be done to get the approvals in time and what are the requirements by the government and the different governing bodies.
Does that mean that there's specialist design firms for different use cases? Like, is it, and what are those use cases? Is it residential all in one part, or is it villas and townhouses, shops, hotels?
Yeah, look, there are specialists. There are some architects, designers who specialize in residential properties, some who specialize in commercial hotels, office buildings. Some would specialize with hospitality. So there are different, some are specialized with development projects where individual developers are developing to sell properties. So you need to obviously when a client wants to do that, we sit down, we explore all the possibilities, different designers and different design firms, and we then select an architect or a designer who we feel is apt for what we are looking at.
If you're a new investor,
yeah,
and you're working with a consultant like yourself, obviously it's in your interest to make sure that the return on investment can be achieved to the maximum extent. Are there design firms also that contribute towards that, or can they contribute to the commercial viability of the property as well, or is that all down to the consultant?
I'll tell you what happens is, Raj, from a designer's perspective, and I'm not in no way trying to blame them, what happens from a designer's perspective, you give them a brief, right? Especially when you are developing to sell, right? So you give them a brief saying, okay, I want this, and they will do what they feel right. Now, me as a consultant, when I get involved in a project, I look at it from the sales perspective, that I am building this to sell. So I have to think from the perspective of my future buyer. When the buyer walks into this property and he sees this, what is he going to look for? Because if I'm selling this property, I need to make sure that I know exactly what I'm building and I make something which is easily sellable, right? So, and it's also unique, so it can be a unique selling point for the property. So, this is something which is very important, and that's where I add value to the project, because we go in with our research, we know what's there in the market, and that's when we tell the designer, listen, look, I want to achieve this, so build something accordingly. I want certain features to be added, certain things to be there. So, when you plan these things properly, because you've thought of, 2-3 years down the line when this project is ready, and when you present it to a buyer, that a person comes in, even if it is for a rental portfolio, okay? So just to give you a small example, we did, I did a project and where it was being built only for rental portfolio. The client never didn't have any intention to sell the project, so we made sure we made larger apartments, because in that area we knew that larger apartments with good balconies and a good big kitchen is something which is not available. The moment we finished the building and we put the building on the market to rent, we were able to rent it absolutely with ease in a market which was going down. Okay, I'm talking, this was about 2-3 years back. The rents were declining, the markets were going down. There was a lot of new projects in that vicinity coming in, but still we managed to achieve one of the highest rates for rental in that particular area. And in the last, the project is now completed about, say, I think 3 or 4 years. The occupancy has been over 95%. Okay, even when people were struggling to rent. Now, okay, at the time when we're recording this episode today, nobody is struggling to rent any property in Dubai. But a few years back, there were people struggling to rent properties. The reason was because it was built with a purpose in mind. The purpose is very clear. The client never wants to sell this property. He wants to build it. He's building it to rent it out, right? So it was made. Similarly, if you build to sell, you need to make sure that what would you be needing to make today that appeals to the buyer tomorrow. right? So design makes a lot of difference. I'll also give you one example. There are very few developers who pay a lot of attention to design, but the ones who do, when their products are ready, even in a market which is going down, their products have sold at a premium once it's ready. It's simply because there was a lot of attention to design and the quality of build.
And so when it comes to the utilization of the space, it remains the responsibility of the investor and their consultant. And if the design is able to contribute there, it's a positive thing, but it shouldn't be expected because ultimately it's the responsibility of the investor and the consultant.
See, when you talk about this, space utilization, these things, these are small things which add a lot of value. Now, not necessarily every designer might look at it in a lot of depth, okay? Because they're doing a job for a fixed fee, right?
And they're also following design principles rather than
right?
utilization principles.
Yeah. So that's where, whenever we get involved in a project, that's where I add value because, 1,000 square foot apartment could be 1 bedroom also, and 1,000 square foot apartment can be a 2 bedroom also. There can be, space wastage, or it can be optimum utilization of space. So that is something which is very important.
Okay, so then ultimately what you're looking at the end of this process on the design side is something which is attractive and has appeal within the market, but is also functional and has been built for utilization.
Exactly.
Great. So that's the design stage looked at. When it comes to plans approval, what kind of characteristics are you looking for from a individual or from a agency that claims to get your plans approved?
So look, Raj, obviously, any consultant you approach for getting all your approvals and coming on board as a consultant, obviously he has to be licensed. It's the first basic need.
Licensed by who?
By the Dubai municipality to, approach the government authorities and get the approvals. So that's one basic which you would look at.
Before we move on from that, when you ask somebody, are you licensed? Of course, they can show you a license, but what do they do to achieve that license?
I mean, the Dubai municipality has certain criteria, certain qualifications they need, certain number of, experience, number of engineers in the team, and, they have to be of certain qualification in order to get that license. So there is a process where the Dubai municipality actually screens the companies, the consultants, and then a license is issued to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what else can you look at in terms of like how many have they had approved in the past? I'm assuming it's a little bit more binary than it is when it comes to looking at design.
When you talk about a consultant who's getting you all the approvals, the best way to do about it is that whichever area you're developing in, see how many projects the consultant has running or completed in that particular area. Because what happens is if they're working in a particular vicinity, they are then aware with all the rules and regulations of all the different government bodies require, what they require in terms of compliances. So that makes the job much easier for them and for you.
Sorry, I apologize for cutting you off. So you're looking for somebody who has the ability to put in place the right compliance on a per area basis rather than on a per government department basis?
It is both, but yes, if you go into one particular area, I mean, see, what happens is there are consultants who, once they are authorized, they can work anywhere in Dubai.
Yeah.
But what happens is there are some, consultants who are more focused on a particular area. They're doing more projects in that area, so that actually helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. So let's step outside the mold a little bit here. Can you work with an overseas designer?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
To get the design and the plans in place, and say probably your interior designs and the renders and all, yes, you can do that.
What are the high-level pros and cons of working with, let's say, a designer from somewhere else?
The advantage would be, okay, you maybe it's from your home country. They understand your requirement and your design language more better than probably someone over here locally, or simply you're more comfortable with someone, because there's a possibility that you've worked with someone before and you're very comfortable. They understand what you need, and you might want to keep them as your design architect, which is absolutely fine. The one drawback in this, what happens is when it comes to execution on site, right? If that particular design firm is not really present over here locally, obviously then what will happen is you'll have to add one more consultant, who understands that design and makes sure that that same thing is being executed over here. This also can be done by someone who's doing your approvals. Sometimes they can also take care of it, so you don't add another third party. But yeah, that's the thing. Only thing is the physical presence on site would be much lesser as compared to what it would be for a local designer. But again, having said that, it's not something which is impossible or something which you can't do. It is possible.
And how do the people that you put in place for the designing and for the plans approval, how do they get compensated? Obviously with cash, but is it a percentage of your investment? And
Look,
what are the minimums to engage agencies?
Some consultants, so there are two ways of going about it. You could either negotiate with them on a fixed fee basis. Some work on a per square foot basis, okay, that this is their fee on the total built up area. Some charge you a percentage of the spend, right? That whatever the project cost is, they charge you a percentage of that. So there are different ways of doing that. There's no one fixed formula in that. But what happens is it also depends on the project size, because look, what happens from a consultant's point of view, whether they are making a villa, a building, or anything, the scope of work also changes, right? But there's certain things which remain the same. Okay, then when you talk about approaching a government authority, so they also obviously they need to see the amount of time and energy going into the project. So there are different ways of working with them in terms of the fee structure, but yeah, these are predominantly the most common ways.
Would you find the appropriate fee structure on behalf of your client, or would you?
Yes, I mean, look, when
suggest?
we get involved, I actually take care of all those negotiations, making sure the cost is optimized on the project, and we don't end up with a big bill from the consultant side, and we keep it fair for both the parties.
How much of your capital expenditure as a percentage of a total project would be deployed against the design and plans approval stage?
That could be about anywhere around 5 to 10% of the construction cost.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there any instances then where...
Again, when I say 5 to 10%, it also depends on, if it's a big known designer, obviously the fees would change.
Yeah.
Right? If it's someone who's just fresh off the boat and is, wanting to work for a much lesser fee. So it depends.
And are there any instances when we're talking about something as high as 5 to 10% of your total capital investment where...
it's not the total capital investment, the total construction cost, I would say.
Oh, the total construction cost.
Yes.
It's still a large amount.
Yeah.
Is there any instances where a design company or a plans approval company would want to take equity in the sale, or would want to partner with you in the in the build of this property?
That doesn't really happen.
Really?
Yeah, that doesn't really happen.
Specifically in residential or across the board?
Across the board. I mean, unless, that's a very rare scenario where, if they are interested in coming into development, but that's something which is very, very rare.
So that kind of quote unquote joint venture is pretty rare.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. And as an investor working with a consultant like yourself, how much time should you allocate for this stage?
Look, Raj, this is a stage where you can take anywhere about 4 to 6 months.
For the design
Again,
element?
depending on the size of the project.
Right, of course, yeah.
The design going up to the approvals. And see, look, this is a stage where you can, you might finish it in 6 months. You could even go higher, but it all depends on how quick you are in giving a decision. Because what happens many times, people think that the project is getting delayed because of the consultant or the contractor, okay? But many times projects get delayed because of the delay in decision, right? Because if you do not decide on what you want, right, in time, that is not in the consultant or contractor's hand. So this is something which I have personally seen. See, what happens is when you're building something which is, say, for your own use, I can understand, say if it's a family home, you might have 5 family members, You might sit down, one wants something, this thing. It can take time, right? But if it's something you're making for, as a rental portfolio and all, you need to be very clear before you start the design what you want to build, so that once you are clear on what that, and when you go to the consultant or your designer saying, listen, I want this, it saves the time for the designer. Also, it saves overall time on the project. So that is something, very subjective, but yes, ideal scenario, 4 to 6 months.
Okay, so just as a reminder to everybody who's listening, we're at stage 2 of a 4-stage process, which I'll read out for everybody. Stage 1 was identify and buy the land. Stage 2 was design and plans approval, this episode. Coming up in the next episode, stage 3, appointing a contractor. And in the final episode, stage 4, handover. If anybody has any specific questions about design and plans approval, how can they contact you?
They could contact me on any of my social media channels. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Tahir Majithia. They could drop me a DM or email me on tahir@trustedhomesdubai.com. I'm always happy to help.
Excellent. And this season is 4 episodes just on these stages, and there's 3 episodes at the beginning as well to give you an overview.
Yes.
If you want to follow the show or on any of the social media platforms, where can they do so?
If they're watching this on YouTube, I would request them, please subscribe, give us their likes, and their comments are really, really valuable. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcast, please do give us a 5-star rating and review. That really helps us getting discovered. And Spotify listeners, please do follow.
Thanks, Tahir.
Thanks, Raj.